Well, g'day everyone. It's great to have you back and thanks for coming back to the channel. Now, the interview that you're about to see is a pretty unique one because for the first time it's one that is broken into two parts. And it's also one that's being done by my good friend, the professor, as we like to call him, Rick Rayner. Some of you might remember that I interviewed Rick a few months ago, and I'll put a link to his video up here somewhere in the corner. Now, the reason the interview is broken into two parts is because we're interviewing James Toohey. James has been coaching on the track for over 20 years. And by our estimations, no one, not coach, not rider, not track day rider, not racer, has done more miles in the US over those 20 years than James. It's a big statement to make, right? Well, we've done the math and we think we're right. James has done almost 500,000 miles on the track this century. Think about that for a moment. 500,000 miles. That's a lot of riding. And the other thing to kind of wrap your head around is imagine how much he has learned over that time. Over that time, he's coached over 12,000 students across 500,000 miles of track time. I mean, that's just a pretty amazing number. And so guys like James are a wealth of knowledge. And when I founded this channel, the whole principle around the channel was to really reach out to those of you with learners' mindsets, those of you that are willing to take the time, sit back, listen and learn from coaches, industry experts, racers. Yeah, it's not a 2-minute TikTok type channel. It's not a sensationalist influencer type channel. This is about really deep information through the eyes and lives of those that know the sport better than anyone else. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage and have a listen. I hope you like it. And please feel free to put some comments down below. Cheers, everyone.
Hey everybody, this is Rick Rayner. I'm here as a surrogate for Kiwi Moto, and we're going to talk to James Toohey today. And James is a coach for the California Superbike School, and this isn't intended to be an advertisement for CSS, but there's probably going to be a lot of talking about it, undoubtedly. So we'll get into how long James has been there. Very unique guy, great rider, world-class coach, and we just want to introduce him to you. So we've kind of got this thing broken down into like 3 sections of interest. We want to learn about James. We want to talk about James's coaching, and then we want to see if we can get some cool nuggets out of James before we're done. So with that, James, welcome to Kiwi Moto. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time, actually. And we've had so many dinners together and we know each other so well. I guess we could talk about a little teeny bit about that background. But first, could you just introduce yourself to everybody and then let us know kind of like how you got interested in motorcycles and how you ended up at the Superbike School. Personally, I've known you for so long, 16, 17, 18 years or whatever. I don't even know. So what did you do? I mean, I know Keith Code's story about the scooter and all that stuff, but I don't know what you did and I think you raced in your earlier years somewhere down in there, right?
Yeah.
So fill us in.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. Well, I've been interested in motorcycles since as long as I can remember. It was probably the first thing I remember really grabbing my attention, seeing a little like dirt bike. I think it was like a RM80 or something like that. Um, and uh, I just used to imagine riding motorcycles probably since I was like 2 or 3 years old. And
Where'd you grow up?
started out in Texas till we moved to Los Angeles when I was about 12 years old.
Okay, a lot of motorcycle stuff going on in California.
Yeah. Well, in Texas, all desert, where we lived, it was desert. So it was dirt bikes were my first uh, attraction. And it just seemed so cool. And it's all I wanted to do. And I think I was about 6 years old. My dad took me dirt bike riding, taught me how to ride a bike. Not very well, but, you know, he did his best. Uh, looking back on it now, of course, I'd be more critical. But, uh,
That's funny.
but I still, remember that experience very well. And, what would I have done different to help someone new out or a child out? And, what affected me? What did I remember? Uh, so, I always remember that and, work off of that a little bit. And, anyways, it was still a good experience. It was a little
Yeah.
stressful, because my dad, he wasn't really a motorcycle rider anyways, but
Was he
so
busting your balls, or did he just kind of let you go crash and fall down and get back up, or what?
yeah,
What's up
yeah,
with that?
well actually it was interesting. I'll just tell you. He first, on a dirt bike you had to kickstart it. So I had to kickstart the thing, right? And I didn't understand the shifting at that point. So he was pretty good at just letting me, just once I got the clutch figured out, and I would just roll the gas on and then roll it off and roll it on and roll it off. And I was like, okay, I got this. This is pretty good. And well, we were near the border. There's a Rio Grande River we were riding next to, and his buddy had this Cadillac there and it was parked parallel to the river. And then at some point, I wound up facing the river, and the car was in between me and the river. And my dad's trying to get me to start the bike, and I don't know, I didn't want to or whatever. He's like, just kick the thing. So I kicked the thing, but I don't know if it was already in gear or whatever, but I kick started the thing and it started, and I just sent it straight in to the front fender of this dude's Cadillac,
Oh man.
which saved me from going into the river because a lot of
Yeah.
people die in that river because the undercurrent's really strong.
Oh wow.
And so it was probably good that I didn't go into the river. But I just remember, I remember sending it into that thing and racking my nuts on the tank, hitting the car and just crying. And I was all mad. But it still did not like deter me from that incredible experience I had.
Man, just think about part of this interview is basically to see if we can get people to understand things like this. You're talking about rolling the gas on when you were how old?
6.
6 years old, and you're remembering rolling the gas on.
Yeah.
Think about, because I think about rolling the gas on too all the time. It's one of the best things, right?
Yeah.
Think about what is in your head, James's head. How many times have you rolled on the gas and got that? Hundreds of thousands, right? It's got to
Oh,
be.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe it's even getting up in the, I don't know if it's millions, but it's got to be incredible. But
Yeah,
anyway,
when you ask it that, that is an interesting perspective, right? It is a fun part of it, and at first, it's just a joy, right? It's sort of a gross motor movement, but it's, one of your primary connections to the motorcycle,
yeah,
right? It's sort of the fun mechanism, and you can do that so many times, and still working on it and fine tuning it and trying to make it better. It's a huge subject, just rolling on the gas itself,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah. So now we know you're 6 years old. You hopped on an RM80 or whatever it was, and you launched it into a Cadillac. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It was awesome.
That's pretty
It's
cool.
still a super fond memory. I was upset about hitting the car, but I was, glad I didn't go in the river. And I was a little mad at my dad, but I was still incredibly thankful that I had that experience.
Yeah, that's cool. Probably the potential of dying in the river didn't really hit you until 10 years later or something.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't not
Anyway, so
even.
what happened after that? When did you, I mean, there's got to be a point, right, where you said, "Hey, I'm gonna spend some of my own money and I'm gonna buy what I want and I'm gonna go race it." Or not. I don't know. Was that motocross or did you get into the, road stuff sooner?
Well, unfortunately, there's a long delay. My parents never really bought me a bike or anything, and so when we moved to LA, had some friends that had dirt bikes when I was about 12 years old, and got to go riding with them a bunch. And then I think a few years later, I managed to get myself a dirt bike, and when I was a teenager, and oh man, that was incredible. What, you know, dirt
What was
bikes.
it?
I
Do you remember what you got?
think it was a Yamaha, a YZ 125, right?
Okay.
And
My first bike was a YZ 250.
yeah,
Dirt bike. First dirt bike, yeah.
yeah,
Those are the cat's meow back then, man. That YZ
yeah.
was the ticket.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And just the freedom and movement, right? You didn't have to worry about cars or anything. And that was the first attraction, in anyways, was the dirt. It's a little more three-dimensional than road racing, road riding, right?
Yes.
You get to jump you just get to create your own lines, right? That's the first uh, step in creating lines, right? And
Yeah.
they're arbitrary, right? But and sometimes you have some parameters out there if you're riding a trail or something like that. You're just trying to weave your way through there and be creative,
Yeah.
right? And that was
The combination of that's one of the reasons I want to get you up here and go trail riding because it's similar to what you're saying. It's
yeah,
not as like I'm too old to go motocross, I think, but trail riding, uh, it's so multifaceted, just like what you're saying, and it's interesting to do that and see the difference because
yeah,
to me the track can be very sequential. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Do you think?
hmm,
Do you agree?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like there's an actual process to getting from one side of the corner to the other side of the corner. And you can interpret that as sort of a sequential thing. But you hop onto a dirt bike, whether it's racetrack, motocross, or the trail, you got lines coming out of your ears, you got roots, you got ruts, you got the throttle, you got brakes, you got up and downhill. It's a mess if you don't start. This is exactly what you're saying, and it's a different challenge. It's fun. I
yeah.
get that. Do you agree or?
Oh, 100%, right?
Okay.
In road racing, the conditions do change, but they change on a very small level. Traction changes a little, temperature changes a little. And there's some deterioration of, you know, certain elements. But on the dirt, yeah, I mean, it's completely new every time, unless you're doing some kind of loop.
Yeah, right.
You're
Yeah,
not doing that corner again.
yeah.
Right?
Totally different challenge. All
You're
right. So,
diagnosing everything in front of you right now. And so you do have to have better sort of reactions, I guess. When you're on a repetitive circuit, then uh, you can fine tune your timing, and you don't need reactions so much. But when you're in the dirt like that and exploring new areas, it, there is a reactive element to it.
somewhere along the line here, you got a street bike, and then did you race?
Yeah, not right away. I got my first street bike. I got my we'll back up just a little bit. I got my first job I got was at a Suzuki dealer. I was 15, and I got a job as the freight and setup. We would get the bikes in crates and take them out of the crate and put them together, and that was my job. I would take the bikes out of the crates, put oil in them. If it was like a quad, I'd put the wheels on and the handlebars on. And it was a motorcycle. I would just clean them up, put oil in them, put the front wheel on or whatever, something like that. And that was, oh man, I was over the moon,
Yeah.
right? And on top of that, I got to test ride all the new bikes. I'd put them together. I had to
Oh
test
my
ride.
gosh.
And so the shop was in an alley. And then at the end of the alley was a big dirt lot. So we did a lot of quads too. And uh, and then across the alley there was a post office that had a like a loading ramp. And I used to take the quad. If I put that together, I would run that up to the end of the block and do donuts in the dirt, and then come to the back down the alley really fast.
On somebody's brand new quad.
Brand new, yeah. And then I would go up the ramp and jump it off the loading dock. And I was like, yeah, fully tested, ready to go.
Oh, that's funny.
It was so fun. And then the street bikes, you just go right around the neighborhood. And and I got to ride all these new bikes, that I couldn't really afford to have. Just riding around the block or whatever, but
Yeah,
that was still pretty incredible.
that's really neat. And
Yeah.
here's something that you probably didn't know. My first job was at a motorcycle shop at a
Oh yeah.
Yamaha dealer.
Wow.
Yep, and doing the same thing. So now you're at a dealer and you're playing around on people's brand new motorcycles, testing them out, of course.
Yeah.
That has to be done. So did you get a deal from the shop for your first
No,
road
'cause
bike?
my first bike was a Kawasaki. I had my heart set on a Ninja 600.
Okay.
Same color as your Aprilia back there, black and red Ninja 600. And I got that. Well, I got and so you get your permit when you're 15 and a half, and
Yep.
and you can get your license when you're 16 at the time. So 15 and a half, I got my driver's permit and I could take my motorcycle test. And the first bike I actually had, I have to backtrack, was my stepdad had this uh, Suzuki Tempter. It was a 650 twin semi cruiser, and he was cool with letting me ride that around, man. I rode the shit out of that thing.
Really?
Man, I didn't care if it was what I wanted or whatever. It was a motorcycle,
Yeah.
and it was so fun. And it was, probably a blessing really because it was pretty easy to ride uh and fairly comfortable and not too over my head. So I rode that around till till I was like 17, I think, or
Oh man.
yeah.
You tested that bike, didn't you, man?
Oh yeah, I crashed it once or twice. And it was, man, I just totally forgot actually about that bike till right now we were talking.
Awesome.
That and then then I had the what I wanted was the Ninja 600, and I had the brochure from the dealership, had it by my bed. I would look at it, uh just riding around being a kid. And then I got that bike, and oh, I couldn't even believe it, man. I was like riding out of the dealership parking lot, like can't even believe this is happening right now.
Yeah. Pretty amazing how newer bikes feel compared to like an older generation too. When you
Oh
get
yeah.
on it and just how they improve the ergonomics and how all the levers feel and everything is just so much better. But now think about that bike now compared to what we're riding around, and it would just feel like just a dinosaur.
Oh yeah, I've ridden them, and yeah, I mean, I remember how it rides, and but I've ridden a gone back and ridden some of those bikes, and they're just the softest, heaviest. It's
Yeah,
still a pretty good bike, right? It'll get you
of
around,
course.
but as your skill level comes up, I mean, strangely, you could ride those better also, but and,
What do you mean you could ride them better?
well, I mean, when you have something with really soft suspension, right? If you're abrupt with your inputs, they actually become unstable pretty
Yeah.
easily. And when you know how to keep a bike stable and you're a little finer uh, with your control inputs,
Hmm.
you can figure out, you know, you can control the weight transfer and keep the thing in check.
Did you race or no?
Yeah, yeah, I did a lot of racing.
Okay.
But
And
I didn't
what?
start racing till later. Um,
Okay.
I was just, typical maniac on the streets, and I lived at the bottom of Angeles Crest Highway, and I was just up there, you know, like you see now, like all the YouTube videos, all those maniacs up there
Yeah.
doing that.
Do we need to address that, by the way? Like, let's send a message out. Maniac
Yeah,
is correct.
yeah, yeah.
Like, this is the reason. Do you ride on the street?
Oh yeah.
Do you?
Not as much as I used to, but
Yeah.
before,
Me,
obviously.
very little. Yeah.
I
Guys
put a
like that
hundred
are
thousand miles on that Ninja 600 I had.
100,000?
Yeah.
Wow. I actually thought to ask you about that a little bit. What you think of these guys making these videos that are they're just flying through these canyons, and I can't even believe. I can give you my opinion. What's your opinion?
Well, I think I mean, they're gonna do it, right? I mean, would I videotape myself? Probably. That's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
riding is cool and having corners is cool. I mean, I remember the appeal and the allure. It's massive, right?
Yeah.
But and I guess it's hard to tell somebody that doesn't have the experience or track experience or overall riding experience what they're doing is a little beyond what they should be doing. But when you're young, you feel indestructible. Yeah, I think I mean, education, I think riding education, and especially on a track, is a big part of uh, maybe having a cooler head up there,
Yeah.
because that's sort of it. It's their only outlet,
Yeah.
right? And you don't want to go slow, you want to go fast,
Right.
right? But when it's your only outlet, then you know that's what they're going to do. But you have to leave a margin, but how much margin do you leave? Right? I mean, I had a lot of, I lost some friends up there in that time, and
I want to get to where you were racing and then how you got into the superbike school or
okay.
coaching. Coaching.
Well, so down there, actually, I was up riding in the crest, and was riding with this group of guys, and one of the guys took off from the group, and I just followed him along, and we took off, him and I, just, you know, jamming up the road. And then he asked me if I raced, and I'd never raced. He's like, "Well, you should." Like, oh, really? I never even imagined that I had the skill set to do that. I mean, it was something I wanted to do, but just sort of seemed unreal a little bit. And and I think right after that, I went to the Superbike school. That was like in '92 to
Okay.
Laguna Seca. That was my first
Uh-huh.
Superbike school at Laguna Seca. And
Wow. When,
yeah,
what, around when, what year was that approximately?
I think it was 91 or 92.
Okay. Wow.
So
And were they riding Kawasaki's back then or
yeah, and then just 600, a ZX6.
that was a school bike though, or that was
Yeah,
your bike?
that
Okay.
was a school bike.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, so I got to ride around Laguna, which was an absolute mind-blowing experience to be on a track. That's like where I was meant to be.
Yeah. cool. So you went to the Superbike school. Obviously, Keith was there. Was Kobe there?
Yeah,
Kobe was there.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. He is the main competition. Not that there is a competition, but he's the other guy that is in the running for the guy with the most
Uh,
uh, lap time, track time in
yeah,
the U.S. in the United States. It's
yeah.
either you or Kobe, but let's talk about that a little later. But just since Kobe came up there, yeah. So he's been there for a long time. So he was coaching when you first went there. You're on the track every day. You don't do a lot of off track stuff. You do it, but not a lot of it. I think my personal opinion, which is worth nothing, is that you've leapfrogged him in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's possible.
But that's all we're going to get out of you or him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not something I was looking at initially, like who's logging the most miles,
No,
but
I know. Not until I brought it up. But hey,
yeah,
man, the concept of the person in the United States of America who has the most time on track is an interesting concept.
yeah, yeah.
And I cannot think, and I know we've talked about this. You didn't think about it before I brought it up to you a year or two ago, but it's such an interesting concept because if you can find that guy, which I think is you, and it could be Kobe, it doesn't matter. Kobe's a great rider, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but think about what's in your head, man.
Yeah.
Think about for somebody like me, or even somebody that's just starting out, or just, the crazy people riding on the road, or anybody that's riding on the track or anything. We all know how much we learn every time we go ride,
Yeah.
right? I mean, just
Yeah.
riding, you're learning. And then, holy smokes, you're not just riding and learning, you're a world class coach,
Yeah.
right? So you're learning and you're coaching and you're riding. Um, I guess we're going to just take this deviation right now, but let's just explain it. And you tell me if I'm wrong.
All right.
I'm just going to spit it out quick. So, how many days a year do you coach? I know you probably have a rough guess, right? 80 something?
Well, we do between 80 and 90 schools a year, and
Okay,
then there's we have other schools out of the country,
right.
which we travel to those. So sometimes I've done, and not including other racing and other, track days and stuff like that. But I think I've probably done 110 days on track with just the schools.
Okay, so now that we have a number for that, let's just emphasize that most people that ride track days ride one session an hour,
Yeah,
right? A
yeah,
group goes 20 minutes, 40 minutes off. Every hour you're riding 20 minutes. As a coach, you're riding every session,
yes.
right?
Yeah, so if we have
So,
15 sessions, I'm writing 15 sessions, three groups,
yeah,
5 sessions each.
yeah. So your normal track day rider is going to ride 5 sessions, one
Yeah,
an hour, maybe six at some track days. It's six.
yeah,
You're riding every single session. So basically times three.
yeah,
Okay. So now we're multiplying your day at the track by three right out of the gate.
yeah,
And then we're going to multiply that by 100 and something days, let's just say, roughly
yeah,
speaking. And then we're going to multiply that by 20 years.
yeah. Well, more accurately, in the beginning, we were doing somewhere around 60 schools a year, and then it moved up to 65 and 70, and just it kept increasing, I think.
It's insane.
But still, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not out there for every lap of every session.
Yeah. You can downplay it all you want, man.
But
I've been with you for 100 of those days myself, over 100,
yeah,
right? I have seen it, I've witnessed it, so you can play it down. But what you guys do at a school, a California Superbike School, not a regular track day, is and I do have it in my notes to ask you about, but I'll do it later. But to be able to do that, you can't be normal. You can't. You got to be physically right. You got to be mentally right. And as a coach, let's just say it's me trying to do it not as a coach. It would be really, really difficult to do, very difficult to do. But now you have to take a student and be nice and be knowledgeable and calm and keep them calm. And you have this whole other aspect of riding all day long
yeah,
to what you're doing every day. It's really inconceivable. And you guys are doing that. And you've been doing it for a long time. It's really unbelievable. So what I guess let's go back to how you got into the school. Can we do that?
sure.
Or do you want to talk about racing a little bit first? Got any interesting stuff there?
Um, yeah, racing was, I didn't really have a lot of money when I was younger, and I didn't have any help, so it was just whatever I could manage. Was some guys are spending 3 grand a weekend just on tires alone.
Yeah.
I had I remember one time I had a turkey pan that I strapped, a zip tie or safety wired to the bottom of my bike because I didn't have a fiberglass belly pan. I raced with that for a little bit,
They
and
wouldn't let you race without a pan,
yeah, yeah, I had something to catch the oil. If
so you just wired one on there.
Yeah, I just wired one on there, and it was legal. It was funny. I used
That
to
is
have
funny.
one of the tech guys at uh, the track I raced at a lot. He's like, he always enjoyed seeing my old beater run around.
How long did you race?
Yeah, I started
Approximately.
racing right after I did the Superbike school. So I did that.
Okay.
That was in 92. I started racing right after that because that was such a profound experience. It really just cleared up a few key points that I felt like I was able to implement right away.
Okay.
And it does definitely improve my speed dramatically, right? Because you have something to work off of, right? I had a pretty
Yeah.
good idea of how to make lines, but um, you know, um, some of those foundational tools or, you know, uh, standard operating procedures, right? Like you get those implemented, then you can work off of those and makes it a lot easier to go fast.
Yeah.
And anyway, I started racing. My first race was on that guy that I met in the Crest. Actually, he sold me my first race bike, which is was an old GPZ 550.
No kidding. Wow. All right.
Yeah. It still had the
Nice.
stock exhaust on it, and I remember going out there, and there's all these new six. It was I don't know what year it was, 85 or 87. No, no, like 84, 81, early 80s GPZ 550, and it had like the dual exhaust on it. I
Yeah,
remember
man.
going
I
out
love that
there and
bike.
just, yeah, it was a fun bike. And it had uh, not much ground clearance. And I remember just scraping everything on the ground. And I was like, wow, I really need to hang off on this thing. Oh, yeah, I tell the story a lot for guys, but um, so I figured, oh man, I gotta hang off, right? And save some lean angle because everything's scraping. And then the first race picture I got, and look, my arms, I looked like I was in a body cast. I was so straight and stiff.
That's funny. Hey, could you think you can find that picture?
Oh
If you
yeah.
can find it, we'll put it up.
Yeah, I have it. I have it somewhere in an actual photo.
Okay.
I have to scan it and download it. Anyways, got into doing some racing, and then I wound up with ZX6, a newer one,
Okay.
like a 2002 ZX6 that my buddy had that he was racing sort of semi-professionally. So it was a pretty good little bike. It was still, you know, worked good. And I raced that for a bunch of years and made it work. And I was pretty determined to just be fast on a 600 before I moved up to the big bike. Because everyone wants to move up to a big bike, but I
Yeah,
was like,
right.
I really liked how it handled, and um, I could go as fast as a lot of the big bikes. I would pass big bikes all the time because you could race up classes also when you're on a 600. If
Hmm.
you're on 1,000, you're limited. You can't race down a class, but you can race up a class. So it gave me a lot more races I could participate in. And then I moved up to a R1 a little bit later, and that was a lot of fun. The power is good, but it's still the handling is not as good.
Yeah.
But learning that uh, corner speed without the power and learning how to get by guys on bigger bikes when you're underpowered is really good experience, really good lesson in throttle control, really.
Yeah. What you're making me think of a lot of things. You're making me think of last year at the race school. Who was the little guy that who was on our team?
Oh, Kensei.
Kensei.
Yeah, he's a kid. He's actually just rode his first S1000 big bike. He's getting
Really?
bigger. Yeah, just the other day at a track day.
Well, what you were just saying was happening to me watching him go by,
Yeah,
right? Because I was like, I was in Podiumville if it wasn't for him.
yeah,
And I mean, by the second turn, I'd beat him off the line every time, every race. And by the turn two, he's going around the out, he's gone.
yeah.
So exactly what you're saying is is still to this day true as can be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a cool for me, it was a great experience to watch that. It was really cool.
Well, that's an old adage, right? Guys are always like, I need more power to go faster. You're like,
Yeah,
no. And very often I've seen so many guys jump on a bigger bike and go slower.
yeah,
Right? Well, you just got 50 more horsepower and you're going slower.
yeah,
Oh, that obviously was not the solution.
yeah.
Right? What do
Should
you
we drill while we're on this? Should we drill into that a little bit and explain why?
Sure. I mean, this is pretty simple. First, I mean, there's perception is different. The timing is different. So you have to get calibrated to the speed, so the thing takes longer to slow down. It ultimately goes faster down a straightaway, but it doesn't really go faster in the corner. So you got more speed coming into the corner,
Yeah.
and you can't carry as much speed going into and through the corner. Right. So
Why is
that's
that? Why is that?
the bike's heavier,
Hmm.
basically. So,
Okay. So it's more mass, and so it takes longer to slow it down, and you're going faster.
yeah,
So it's like a double whammy. It's like
yeah,
I'm going faster into the corner than the 600 or the 400 or whatever it is. Now I have more mass to stop, and I'm going faster,
yeah.
right? And so now, okay, so now we're in the corner. What's up?
Well, it doesn't really want to hold the line as sharply
Okay.
as a smaller bike. Um, the tires are bigger. Um, it's just more work to
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then when you get to the gas, there's way more power, so you have to be more delicate,
Hmm.
uh, more adroit with the wrist control,
Yeah.
right? And so it's easy to overwhelm traction on a small bike. You just can rip the thing open and it goes. You probably don't get
Yeah.
the limit of traction on the rear unless you're
Yeah.
really into the corner hot.
Yeah. And the smaller bike, correct me if I'm wrong, is on the gas sooner,
Yeah,
uh, off the gas, let's say. I mean, sometimes Is it true that maybe they don't always close the throttle all the way? Maybe.
Yeah, there's some depending on the corner, right? The
Yeah.
smaller bikes get away with that. Unfortunately, that idea kind of pervades into riding bigger bikes, which is a pretty huge error. So when you get on a bike on the gas on a small bike, it doesn't tend to push as wide as fast,
Mm.
right? It'll hold the line a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's not as much torque, you
Yeah.
know, power to push it out. Um, and and it takes more actual, you know, rolling of the throttle to make that happen. And it has just more corner speed available too. So,
Yeah. It's just like it's another multifaceted thing. It's
yeah,
like it's not just one thing. It's like you can really, other than straight speed, it's really faster everywhere,
yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%.
right? I mean, other than just having a handful of horsepower, if that guy is even close to you by the end of that straightaway, you're going to be toast
Yeah,
because there's advantages everywhere else, basically. I mean,
100%.
yeah,
Even on the 600, I used to coach those kids a lot on their 125s and 150s, and they're all, they're riding around at lap record pace. Some of those kids I was coaching, they're exchanging lap records, right? And I'm on a
yeah,
600. I'm like, oh, it's good. It's a good experience, but they go
yeah,
into the corner so fast. Skinny little tires. They
yeah.
go into the corner so fast. I don't know how many times I lost the front trying to keep up with them going into the corner. It just
Interesting.
doesn't want to. It's just not capable of those same types of corner speeds. Right?
Yeah,
You make up for it with the gas, and if you have enough power, then you can catch back up. But there is a give and take for sure.
yeah. And I got the privilege, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I got the privilege of watching you chase Kenzai for 2 days, right?
Yeah,
So you're riding a leader bike,
yeah,
so you have all the disadvantages except for the straightaway speed,
yeah,
and you're supposed to be, and you were, but it was amazing.
yeah,
That's what once somebody understands all of this, to watch a guy on a leader bike keep up with that
yeah.
very fast and gifted rider on a smaller bike was really amazing, man. A privilege to watch that. I'm not blowing sunshine up your butt
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen those 2 days. That was such a fun 2 days. And I think that a certain coach blew up his engine
yeah. That's right.
chasing him. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you screwed a certain someone out of a podium position because the race had to restart.
Oh, yeah,
And and they restarted the race. They didn't give us the positions that we had when we when you blew up.
yeah.
They regridded it uh like it was starting over.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I missed a podium because you blew up that damn engine, dude.
I don't, I
I
don't
I'd never
remember that exactly, but that's
yeah.
funny.
Back there right before the kink, you blew up your motor.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was gonna be on the podium. I was right there, man. I was right there.
Oh, yeah.
And then red flag, everybody come in, they restarted the race. I really wanted them to regrid it per position,
Yeah.
current position, but they didn't do it. They regridded it normal.
Yeah. I don't,
And, everybody learns, it takes half a race, you can learn a lot, and I couldn't get back there, man.
yeah.
I didn't care, but I mean, it's a funny ass story, man, because you owe me a podium, dude.
Yeah, that's funny.
Anyway, all right. So, uh, that was a fun little tangent. Well, this is great. And so you're racing, and then at some point, how did you get to the Superbike school? Because I guess we can transition now, if that's okay, unless you want to
Yeah.
add something to racing. Uh,
Well,
let's
actually,
transition to talking about you as a coach and how you got there.
um, yeah, actually, on the, part of my racing experiences, I raced a lot of small bikes, like like the YSRs. They were popular back then, um, and we had a crew, and we had a bunch of little bikes, and we would race. And some of them were tricked out. Some of them had, like little YZ80s in them, and they were, whew, man, those were so fun, so powerful with a nimble little bike. But I did a bunch of endurance racing too on those things, and in stock form where there's like no horsepower. And for me, that was a huge learning experience to, uh, which guys don't get on big bikes because the horsepower makes up for a lot of deficiencies, seemingly. Uh, and so you don't notice the loss in entry or mid corner speed, and you just smash the gas on. You feel like you're going really fast, or you got it leaned
Bad
over all
traction
the way.
control.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and on a little bike, if you're on the brake a little bit too long with the guy in front of you, he puts a bike length or two on you, and it is incredibly difficult to make up because you have no power to make up for it. So you have to control and manage your entry speed and mid corner speed to keep the momentum through the corner.
Hmm.
And that is an incredibly valuable experience that a lot of people miss just jumping to a big bike right away or too soon,
Yeah.
especially for
Yeah.
kids
I
coming up.
totally agree. Yeah. That's a good little, that's a good nugget.
Yeah,
It's a great nugget. Yeah. Awesome. I can't agree more. I mean, I've got my supermoto now, which is, single cylinder. And there's a lot more of that going on. And I didn't have that before the supermoto. I was dealing with a leader bike my whole, you know, track
yeah,
career, basically. So it's a different world and it's really fun.
yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Man, I agree. So, all right. That's good stuff. Do you want to switch to the becoming a coach?
Sure.
Okay.
I think I did a bunch of racing. I was still racing when I became a coach. Actually, I think I got my license got revoked at one point. Longest period I had went without riding was like almost a year or
Okay.
a good part of a year. I hadn't ridden at all. And then they had um I saw in the paper Road Racing World or something like that, they had an open tryout for coaches. And I was like, oh, how amazing would that be to be able to ride on track, help people out. Just sounded really cool. I was a little nervous about it. I thought, oh man, that's way out of my league. But so I borrowed my friend's motorcycle. He had a CBR 900 or something like that, and just went to the track there and sent it. Tried to ride pretty cool and you know do a good job. And Kobe was there actually. He was running the tryout. And I don't know who else actually got picked out of that, but I got picked out of that. And I think actually there was a couple of things I had to work on. They were like, well, you're fast enough for sure. And just had to work on some body position stuff. I guess that wasn't really all that good. And so I went and did a little bit of corner working to work on a couple of things. Um, and I wound up running through the program again too, which was really good, like level one, two, and three.
Hmm.
And I needed to work on the body position sort of thing. It's not something that I had really put a lot of attention on, really. But
Were you one of those guys? Can you think of anything that, well, my example is how, they're almost everybody doesn't really know how to steer.
yeah,
So they learn how to steer. Were you one of those guys? Like,
um,
did you go through that whole tryout and everything, and maybe you weren't really even steering correctly? Were you
no,
working too hard?
I mean, I'd done the Superbike school before, and I had read Keith's books before I ever did the Superbike
Okay.
school.
Okay.
I experimented on my own with counter steering a lot. Um, I knew how to
Wow.
steer the bike.
Good for you, man. That's unique.
Yeah, I was a voracious learner, man. I like read and studied, and I like learning, and so I would experiment like that's what a lot of people don't do, right? They're afraid to use the brakes or don't understand steering, and then just don't investigate it. But I would practice steering, I would practice braking, I would brake later, harder, practice stoppies, you know, would want to find the limits of the controls, right?
Yeah.
And given that, like I still learn so much about steering, man. It you kind of cycle around and come back. It's like, oh, I'm going to take another look at steering, right? And
Yeah.
doing all these steering drills with people and doing them myself. And there's a lot to learn to just fine tune and get the nuances out of it. To really, what you're trying to do is simplify the action, right? And
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
really understand it conceptually, uh, which, obviously teaching and guiding someone through that learning process is incredibly valuable in your own experience and learning process.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I did still get a lot better. It's not like I was a ninja at it, but I understood counter steering and I could get the bike turned for sure.
Great. All right. Well, was there anything that you look back on now and you're just like, man, I was really busting my ass to make that happen, and now it's like, now I
Think
get it.
I had a like good aptitude for lines, I think, and they've all been obviously refined and improved dramatically, but I had a pretty good sense of line and I think pretty good throttle control. The throttle control really, when I did the Superbike school, that was a big epiphany. Like just the exact timing, I was a little uncertain. I remember once I learned it that the exact timing. I mean, on the road, you kind of figure it out to some extent because a lot of the corners up there are these decreasing radius corners, and I had run wide, and that's not a place you want to run wide, you
Yeah.
know, on the road in a mountain, right?
Yeah.
With cars coming the other way. And so, you just figure out where an apex is on the road and you make sure you're not rolling on the gas, you know, before that point, before it starts straightening out. And so it was a more of a survival directive,
Interesting. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then once I went to school, I really understood why and how that worked. And so I was able to apply it more efficiently.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you do. I can vouch. Dude, how many hundreds of corners have I been behind you? And let's just pretend that I'm hanging with you at some point in some track somewhere.
yeah,
But where I can never feel like I'm even close to keeping up is you getting on the gas.
yeah,
It's so your timing, exactly what you're talking about, man. It's like you understand it all so well, and it's still not in my head how what exact really good throttle timing is,
yeah,
and I just can't. I mean, yeah, it's what am I trying to say? It's frustrating and unbelievable at the same time to ride
yeah,
behind not just you, but Johnny or any of the coaches,
yeah.
that have their shit together, which is pretty much all of them. It's something to behold, is what I'm really trying to get out. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that, Johnny and I, about one of the other guys who's really fast but he's still a little behind on the throttle, right? And uh it's like I can explain to you there's a basic throttle control timing rule, right?
Hmm.
Where and then there's sort of the nuances of it, and I can explain that to you uh, in a way you can understand, but you're really not going to understand it until you go experience it, right? Okay, so what's the timing, the basic timing I want? I want this. And are there variables to it and exceptions to the rule? Of course there are. Um, but uh, then when you get that sorted, okay, now we're going to fine tune this a little bit. Like this corner requires a slightly different throttle control timing or amount, rate, whatever. If is it decreasing, increasing, constant, long radius, little radius, they all require slightly different throttle control timings. But ultimately, the throttle control is just line control, which is the easy way to think about it. It's not, I don't think of it as a speed control. I think of it as a direction control
Yeah.
more so, right? And
That that's so good. Could you be a little more specific on that point?
yeah, you're really looking for like if you were to baseline, um, well, at least like riding fast or effectively or efficiently, uh, your throttle control timing has to be good. But what is it that you're trying to control? You're you are trying to control the speed, but it's the speed that is affected or affecting the line.
Hmm.
So if I don't, and then what you see this on YouTube videos all the time is guys running wide, steering the bike in, but they're still on the gas.
Yeah.
Why would you be on the gas while you're
I
running wide?
Yeah, why would you do that? It's because they don't know. But what I wanted to get at is you said that what you're really searching for isn't necessarily the throttle. The throttle is a symptom, but you're really looking for something else that requires you to do X, Y, and Z with the throttle. And you're looking for what?
Well, on a track or a road, you have a limited parameter, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to make uh, an efficient route through there and just one that allows you to roll the gas on, right? And if
Hmm.
you want to use all the exit, then you just roll more gas on. But it does get a little confusing because you have the handlebars that steer you out, right? And then the gas that pushes you out.
Hmm.
And so the handlebars control direction via lean angle, and the throttle controls direction via speed. And that's where it becomes a lot of confusions. People think, oh, the throttle stands the bike up, or which those ideas are easy to dispel if you just think it through a little bit. But
Yeah. Or go ride and think about it on the bike and
yeah,
just prove it to yourself. You could just go out and ride and prove it,
which people
uh,
don't do, right?
or
They
have a good coach and just can take you out and show you.
yeah, it's just experiment. You have to separate, right? Like if you're, I just think of it as doing little science experiments, right? And
Yeah.
you have to take away all the extra variables, really.
Yeah.
Take the pressure off the bar, roll on the gas. Does it stand up or not? It
Yeah.
wouldn't take you
That's
long to
great.
figure that out.
Yeah. And one of the big problems that I think happens is when people go to the racetrack, they just want to have fun and
Mhm.
they don't necessarily want to work. And I'm not talking about a school necessarily either, but just go to the racetrack. You just want to go, man. You just want to. The last thing you want to do is get out a notebook and start taking notes. And these are all the things I want to work on, and this is what I need to go witness and see what happens. It takes because you know everybody rides every in the summertime every 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. The last thing you want to do is go, make a project out of it, which is kind of what I've seen. And so the cool thing about you and people like you is you've done all of that stuff.
Yeah,
So guys like me come along. I mean, I actually love to turn, as you know, turn stuff into a little science project all the time.
yeah,
But it's still more fun to not worry about any of that stuff and just go out and rip it. And then when you get tired of ripping it, then you kind of reel it back in and say, okay, maybe I'll do some homework today and figure out what I can do better, and spend some time, not going fast. I guess that's the big point is it's hard to slow down and do work so that you can be better.
um, yeah. I think that's a very interesting topic all in itself, right? Because you have
Do you
uh,
see people do you see students like come in and they just want to go fast, and you need to say, hang on a minute, man, you just have to go slower, and we need to work on some things so that you can go faster.
Yeah, you have it. I mean, I ran through that myself on certain things where it was tough for me to have the discipline to slow down enough that I had some attention left over to focus on the particular thing that I wanted to improve.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I got to just focus on this for a couple laps. And it happens usually pretty fast, but you have to be willing to go slow. It's hard to overcome that. I just want to go fast right now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Got to get it out of your system a little bit. Yeah.
But
So,
you do have to implement that uh, experimental phase, right? And and I think it's important to not necessarily go out and try and get it right. I'm going to go out and have perfect throttle control timing. You just go out and roll the gas on a little more than you should,
mhm,
and not enough, right? What has happened with a little bit of gas? What happens with a lot of gas? And
yeah,
Um, you know, and the problem with it also is that there's fears involved, right? People are worried about traction and stuff like that. But you can do all these little experiments with a small amount of lean angle.
I'm just curious to know what your general comments are about how do you get students to do that? Because I know what I've seen. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So, what do you can you categorize like certain types of students?
I could
Let's hear it.
categorize them, but everyone has to have a purpose. If you're like doing a science experiment, there there has to be the parameters
Hmm.
and, and a primary objective. Now, maybe it's not going to turn out exactly how you think. That's why you're going to do the experiment because you're
Yeah,
trying to learn. And uh, without that purpose there, then uh, there's no then everything's sort of arbitrary. It's like riding a dirt bike out in the open desert, right? Like, how do you make a good line out there? It's just whatever line you want. That's a good line, right? It
yeah,
doesn't matter, but as soon as you put the parameter in there, and now we have a math problem basically, right?
yeah, right.
What am I trying to make efficient through the corner? Well, what do I mainly want to do in a corner? Do I want to steer? Do I want to break through it? Can't break all the way through a corner, right? Want to use the gas, right?
Yeah,
Um, that's the fun part. But you know, that everyone learns a little differently, but at the same time, everyone learns the same. It's just everyone's different ratio. You have the theory part, like in the school, you get the theory, then you go out and try and apply it. You come back in and talk to your coach, and then we go, okay, so this is what you actually did. This is what you thought you did, right? These are the parameters, right? And there's a lot of technical information, right? So you need uh, to help someone to help keep that organized, right?
yeah,
And and it's hard to see what you feel you're doing, maybe way more extreme than what you were doing,
yeah,
but not anywhere near what it needs to be.
yeah.
Or, right, just say like lean angle, for example. Someone thinks they've got it leaned over to the moon, right? They're leaned over like 20 degrees. They're like, oh, man, that's a lot of lean angle, right? They're used to 10 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And someone else is like, well, this thing will they have different ideas and they got the thing on a peg and like, oh, it's got a lot more. And you're like, it doesn't have a lot more. It has no more. It's it, right?
Yeah,
You need that outside perspective, right? To
yeah.
get you calibrated, right? Help you with your experiment, right? These are the things you're not seeing.
I wanted to ask you along those lines, um, how often do you see that? Let's just call it a phenomenon, like a student. You ask a student to go do something, and they go do their best to make it happen, and they come back thinking, you know, they nailed it. I got it. And
Oh,
you just shake. You have to shake your head and say, "Hey, man, I think you had it in your head, but you're not. You're not there."
yeah.
The polite way to say it. Is that common? How often do you see that? Everyone
Uh,
or half or
I mean, I guess everyone does it to some extent. It's probably more rare that someone goes out and gets it just right away.
yeah.
I mean, just right.
But the perception, what I find interesting is the perception that someone has of themselves when they're riding.
Oh
Their
yeah,
personal perception of what they're doing and what they did is not even in the realm of close, because just the way that we personally perceive what we're doing with, because the observation is what they need, is what really we're getting at. Like they
yeah,
need to be observed. Otherwise, you go through all this writing and you think you're doing something because it feels that way to you,
yeah,
but they're not doing it.
yeah. And part of the problem is that, you know, no matter how much you try to simplify something, someone still, like riding a motorcycle, still has to ride through the corner, still has to do all those actions that, you know, they are more or less familiar with, right? And so how much attention is that taking away, right? If you
Yeah,
have so much attention available and it's spread thin just to focus on this one little thing. And so their awareness of what's actually happening is going to be uh, vague,
yeah,
right? Because they're worried about leaning over too much or rolling the gas on too much, right? Or uh, depending on
yeah,
their experience and all that kind of stuff. So it is common for sure for their awareness of what exactly they did to be off.
yeah,
Of course, some are way off or think they nailed it, and there was no perceptible change at all.
yeah.
Right?
I just think that that's pretty common. That's pretty common.
It definitely
But what
happened.
we're really talking about the value of being observed, right?
But,
The value of being observed by a trained observer,
yeah,
which is you.
yeah,
Like
long
the
enough.
best, most expert trained observer is somebody like you.
Yeah, any endeavor you're going to do, if playing baseball, tennis, golf, martial arts, you have to have somebody watching you do the thing, especially things uh, that you really can't truly isolate. Like if you're in the gym and you're just doing a curl, right? I can say, well, lower your hands a little bit more. It's easy to do. There's no danger involved, right? There's no other movements involved. You're doing one simple movement, and so I can isolate that movement or fine tune it very quickly, right? But when you have multiple movements occurring or a complex action, uh, even a baseball swing is a pretty complex action, right? How you
Yeah,
move your feet, how you move your core, how you move your hips, your arms,
yeah, right.
all these little pieces, right? Now I could have you practice that without a ball coming and just freely swing the bat. But I guarantee you, especially someone new, right? You're not going to throw 100-mile-an-hour pitch at him and say, okay, now swing and put your elbow here and step here and then do all these pieces. Like they're never going to have enough attention. All their attention is going to be on hitting the ball,
Right.
which is where it should be, right? But so you're not going to have awareness of what you did. And in motorcycles like that, you're moving through space, right? Fast or slow, and and your perception of what's happening uh, is dependent on your experience and uh, your ability to be comfortable with the other actions that are happening, your own confidence and certainty that you can just keep it on the track. Some people are worried about overleaning or giving it too much gas, sliding out, traction, running off the track, or
Yeah,
these sort of things that they don't know where the boundaries or limits are.
yeah. Dying is a pretty common fear.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, flying through space, man, and there's no one else. It's you and your fingers.
yeah,
And, yeah, it's a lot. To say there's a lot is kind of pretty much an understatement, right? I mean, there's the fear of there's a lot to deal with. in the noggin.
Yeah.
So I just think that you're somebody that would be good to just, I mean, you've seen it. You've seen it all. Maybe you've seen so much of it that it just seems normal to you. But I mean, you've seen hundreds of people, coping with all of this stuff. What's that like?
Well, that's it's very interesting and sorry. And also find very fascinating because like for me, from my perspective, it's always a puzzle. Like
Yeah.
I have a totally different person in front of me and you could make some initial generalized bye. You can make some initial generalized judgments, but ultimately you have to see like where this guy's awareness is at. And I've had all spectrums from this guy that tells me he's class champion and I got a million miles of track experience, right? And you're like, where on what? Like, what have you been doing? And this is,
Yeah. I mean, these days, is it fair to say that these days you might hear that going in? Like, hey, we got this new student coming in and he or she is just what you just said, whatever. It's got all this experience and whatever. Are you at the point where you're just kind of like, whatever? I mean, we're gonna see what it is.
yeah, that's it.
We'll
I
go
mean,
from there.
there isn't anything else to do. I'm like, oh, great, you're a world champion. Fantastic. Let's see what that looks like.